My name is Chief Robert Joseph. I was born in Alert Bay. It's a tiny little island on the off of the northern tip of Vancouver Island. And I grew up there for the most part. And I grew up as well in some small, isolated villages close to Alert Bay. And they're really wonderful memories. The time hadn't really changed yet. All the Aboriginal people were still living in their communities, and their first language was Kwakwala. And they lived off the land, and it was a really abundant life. Lots of food sources, good energy. People lived off the land. The culture was strong. And so those were my very early recollections of my childhood there. And eventually, though, I ended up in an Indian residential school, and things took a turn for the worse. And from there, my life drastically changed. My grandfather had a real influence over me. Even though he died when I was 6, I learned a lot from him, because I went, every time he went seal hunting or fishing or hunting other game and fowl, I would go with them. And he would tell stories that were fables in many ways, teachings from the old days. So he was fairly influential in my life. As a young person, when I entered residential, it was really a lonely, traumatic experience. First of all, to suddenly be taken from your home and your family and your community for the first time ever at 6 years old, and you find yourself in a place where you couldn't speak your language. It was forbidden, and you were punished very harshly for doing those things. And then, of course, just the loneliness, and ending up in a school where there were over 200 kids. And there were not that many staff people who looked after all these 200 kids. It was a challenge to feel safe, comfortable, wanted, loved, nurtured. And so in my early time, I suffered some of those doubts and reservations about what a little child should be. And I think you find ways to survive early in life, and you reached out to your own peers and made your own friends and found your own little ways to try to protect yourself as much as you could, right? And so those were the ways in which I responded to some of those difficulties. I stayed in that school for a long time, 11 years. I was a young man when I finally graduated from there. And unfortunately, because of all the trauma and the challenge, I started drinking very early in my life. My first drink was 14, and by the time I got out of that school, I just didn't know how to drink at all, and my whole life was a real challenge after that. And I got out and I started to work. I logged and fished when I first got out of residential school. And I decided to have a family, because it's something I'd never had in all my life in those early childhood years, because I was in this residential school. And I had 5 children right away. And eventually, because of my drinking, I lost that family. And it was terrible. It seemed to me it was even worse pain than the other pain that I'd grown up with as a little child. And it was so difficult. I got married, I lost the family. And one day I had this vision, epiphany, some other people call it, right? And I was walking around in Campbell River in a stupor. I was living in Campbell River then. And just drinking too much, because it hurt so much to lose my kids and my wife, almost losing my home. I wasn't working anymore. And one day, this friend of mine said, "Come fishing with me. I don't like what you're doing to yourself." So I went with them. And we went out on this big boat. There were 6 of us on the boat, right? I woke up early the next morning, and I looked around, and I remembered who I was, that I'd become a broken down man, drinking too much, man. So I snuck out of my bunk. Everybody else was still asleep, and I went to the back end of the boat, and I hid behind a drum. God knows why, because there was nobody else around. And I got behind a drum, and I broke down, and I said, "God, help me." And I wasn't talking to God, because I hadn't thought about him for a long time. He'd sort of abandoned me for a long time, and I said, "God, help me." And just as soon as I was doing that, I opened my eyes, and I started to look, and I saw the ocean between the boat and the mainland. And it was the most beautiful ocean I'd ever seen in my life. Energy, seemed to be boats going through green coral, beautiful. And the mountainside on the other side was the same. The whole forest, the tree, the mountain had life and energy, and it was powerful. And then I looked above the mountain to the snow caps, and to the heavens, and the whole universe appeared before my eyes, just like that, the whole universe. And then I heard this voice saying, in spite of what you've done to yourself, I love you, and you belong, and you're a part of all of this. And I went back to my bunk and woke up, and we fished for one day, and I went back to Kemba River, and I went straight back to the bar. I'd forgotten the experience, straight to the bar, and I started drinking again, the darkest corner I could find. And I told the bartender to load up my table. At that time, they used to be able to do that. And I drank all that beer, and I was dead sober. And I thought, oh my God, something's going on here. And I ordered some more. And then close to the closing time, I was still dead sober, absolutely dead sober. By this time, I used to be in a stupor, so I couldn't feel the pain anymore, right? And I walked home to my home, which wasn't very far from where the bar was. And I had the most wonderful sleep ever in my entire life. I woke up the next morning, and it just didn't hurt as much anymore. And I knew that I had to change my life, and I had to do certain things, and I stopped drinking. That was how many years? Over 30 years. Never drank again in my life, and ever since that time, I've been spending my time helping others recover from trauma, from addictions, whatever it is they want to recover. I want to be there to help them. But to help the community, anybody in a community, because what I'm trying to serve are not just my own people, not just Aboriginal people, not just people of color, but all of us, because we need to create a humanity that's kinder, softer, gentler, caring, loving, nurturing. There's too much conflict going on, too much strife, too much pain and hurt. And so I've decided to, for the rest of my life, I'm 69 years old now, to do what I can to see if I can help change it, right? And that's not been just for a little while, but I've thought about those things, and they've become really, really important to me. And so after that turning point in my life, after that very personal vision, I did lots of volunteer work. I was the chairman of the United Way in Kemba River 1 year, chairman of the Heart Drive in Kemba River 1 year. I was on the credit union board of the hospital in Alert Bay, and I was on a hospital board. I tried to reach out and find places where I could be useful. And I discovered that in being useful, I gave meaning to my own life. And so it wasn't me just giving as I thought I was. I was really learning and growing and developing. And I think that's the whole point about our lives, that if we all can learn to do that, to think about others, to be of service to others, that would be the key message I would have. And so that's how I got involved in community work, just wanting to be helpful after the turning point in my life like that. So my dreams for my own community and for others is to find freedom spiritually. I think we're all spiritual beings as well as being merely mortal. We have a part spirit that we need to nurture and to develop. And I think the fullness of who we are only manifests if we learn how to be spiritual, to know that there's a great purpose in our lives, as well as a little small steps which all serve our purpose, but a greater purpose to all our lives. And if we can all be inspired to see somehow.